going on, everyone? Happy New Year and welcome to a New Year's episode of Carbonite Bounty BS. Me and the nerd.
Happy New
How you doing?
Year!
Happy New
May
Year!
this year be better than all years before it.
All right.
Right.
It doesn't have to do a lot to clear the recent hurdles. So just
Not at all. Not at all. Just
Not at all.
we're
get
poised for success.
Let's just not die. How about that?
Oh yeah, there we go.
Yeah, but no, guys. I mean, it's start to a new year or start to a new series, right? It's crazy, It's had a short break and came back, and yeah, poised for the long haul. I mean, I know we discussed this on previous show, but I mean, we have a lot of content coming this year, Star Wars nerddom wise. I mean, there's just so much going on this year, which is good because I felt like we've been starved for so long for a big year like this. So for all our listeners and viewers, great news for you guys, great news for us because we get to do more talking, things we like to do. But before we even get into that, let's let our guy DP let you guys know where to find us at.
Nerdcyclopedia.com. People, make sure that you're going to that site and making sure that you are getting all your favorite social media platforms on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Make sure that you are for now. Listen to our podcast on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, anywhere that you listen to your favorite podcast, we are there. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you. All right. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, hitting that notification button, and also hitting that share button. So anytime that you're on, anytime that we're on, you know that we're on, and you can also share it with your friends. If you're on Facebook watching us now, thank you as well. All right. Go to Carbonite Bounty BS, the Star Wars group. We are on there talking about everything Star Wars. So make sure you hit up that group and share that as well. Make sure that you give us some feedback at nerdcyclopedia.com. We love your feedback on the shenanigans that we go through with this show.
We like your face too. We love your face.
And your faces are fine. We don't.
It's a beautiful thing.
I don't know who's the best liar of us four. Who's gonna Ken? Why don't you better tell them they're gonna have great faces.
Everyone has great faces. We love y'all. You all know more than us. And if we could switch places with you, we would, but we can't. So,
right.
There you go.
Well said.
Oh goodness.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
DP.
definitely.
Oh, DP.
Yeah,
and he still has my dog as his background because we share accounts because we're Nerd Encyclopedia. Oh goodness gracious. All right.
But yeah, guys, I mean, kicking off the new year, we've got a twofer. So season 2 of the Bad Batch, episodes 1 and 2 review today. So yeah, we'll start out with Hitch today. What did you think of the first two?
All right. I like this series a lot, and I like that it's a continuation of the Clone Wars with the same sort of characters. I was really impressed with Omega in this episode. I like that character a lot, and I think that she's really turning into the Boba Fett if Boba Fett were a woman, right? That's kind of what she's destined to be. And I think it's really nice that they have a second shot at developing that character. Maybe they can do it right this time. So hopefully that goes. And I, of course, am alluding to the Boba Fett series where he was the respectable daimyo. I just want to see him be a ruthless bounty hunter. Anyway, I liked it a lot. I was also found myself very impressed with how different the clones are. I mean, these guys are, the performance even itself makes them feel very differentiated. And it's not just that they do different things. They're not just like a video game team where you have to pick the right character and get like Lost Vikings or something like that, right? Where you have to have the right guy in the right place at the right time. There's a lot more to that. And I like that this episode showcased that. We have Hunter trying to do some tech stuff. We have Wrecker, trying to do some tech stuff. So we see our clones are Team 99 put in very different situations than we're used to seeing them and utilizing different skill sets that we're not familiar with. I miss this team. This is kind of, it's what we're getting right now, right at post Order 66. And it's so interesting to see how the clone troopers have developed, how, they are sort of relegated to this crappy, mop up detail where they're going into a planet they've already essentially nuked and just taking all the expensive stuff out of it. And even that duty is not appreciated. So, we see the Empire sort of spending the clones here. Man, I really like this show a lot.
Yeah. What about you, Ken?
You know what I took away from this? Everything that Hitch said, right? Great series. Loved it from episode 1, right? So this one was nice because I got to see what a jerk Dooku was. I mean, he annihilated his own people. He led his own people to destruction, and he raped his own cities and planet for his own gain. So we saw a different Dooku in the
Tales
short
of the Jedi.
story.
Yeah.
Tales of the Jedi. We saw a different Dooku, right? Dooku was like sort of a intellectual, maybe misunderstood. No, he wasn't. He was a jerk. He was a jerk.
Well, he was on his way because that one episode, you know, that
Yeah,
one story,
he was starting to turn.
Mhm.
And the old man they met, what was his name? I don't even think-
Romar.
Yeah,
Romar.
he even looked like him. I mean, he had similar facial characteristics, similar hair. So I like that. The whole backstory. Like, I'm a kind of a backstory guy. Like, I like to know where stuff came from. So I like that part. The Bad Batch, always my favorite group right now. The clone breakout team. Wrecker, with the actual cannon off a separatist tank, engineered how to put the battery pack on it. You know, they're like, get the battery pack. That's not going to do any good. Yeah, leave it to me. I mean, he's carrying around the cannon, and I mean, that's the ultimate fighter right there, right? Use what you have, figure it out, and make stuff happen. The only thing that I found was a little odd was their blasters were all on stun, the Bad Batch. So I'm wondering, do they still feel something for the clones, like a connection? So they don't want to kill them. They want to knock them out, right? So they can get to this, this war chest and get the treasures so they can benefit from it. But they don't want to kill any of the clones because their blasters were all on stun, right?
Right.
I'm getting that. So I thought that was interesting. What I really loved was at the end of episode 2, which I don't think this should have been episode 1, episode 2. This was like one episode broken up into a bathroom break.
Right.
As far as I was concerned. This was just a continuation of one thing. So we're really looking at a review of episode 1, which was 2 chunks, because this so seamlessly connected that I didn't see this as 2 episodes. But at the end of episode 2, it was suggested to me to watch Andor.
What did you do, Ken?
I watched it. And you know what? What a great series that is. So if you're out there and you haven't seen Andor, you definitely need to watch it. But then watch Bad Batch too. But this was by far one of the better opening season engagements that I've seen from the Star Wars universe with the new content. So, I mean, I dug every single minute of this.
Do what Ken says, people. Let the algorithm take you away.
Right.
Disney has this thing down. So if you just want your life controlled for the rest of however long you're going to breathe, might as well just buy Disney Plus and watch whatever it wants you to watch.
What about you, DP?
Yeah, the episodes. Okay, so the episodes were good. The episodes weren't great to me, you know. But this is the beginning of the season, so you know, which you're going to get like a slow roll as compared to what we got like at the beginning of, you know, the first season, where things were coming straight off the Clone Wars. This was sort of like a bit of a, maybe for me might be, you know, maybe like a letdown. It was very light on plot. You know, it was just a ABC, you know, type of thing. You know, get the cargo and everything, and go secure the thing, like a typical A-Team episode or whatever. And I'm not a big guy on procedurals and stuff, so for me, you got to have a little bit more plot stuff in there, and a little bit more character stuff to keep me, you know, really engaged. But I'm imagining what this team would be like without without the little one.
Omega.
Omega.
Yeah, Omega. Um, she's good, but she could be sort of in the way, you know. I tolerated her last season, and I don't think I really said a lot of negative things about her. I think I came around to her and everything, but I think I found, in these 2 episodes, I'm like, okay, what if they didn't have her on the team? How much more gritty and how much more into it would the characters be? And you wouldn't get sort of these light moments and stuff. You get like light-hearted moments and everything because of her. You know how much more of a how much would the show be different without her? It wouldn't necessarily. I'm not saying that this is like a kid show or anything like that. I don't want to put bad bash in that type of thing. But I can you could tell what it is sort of like a family type of, okay, you want to get some of the younger ones on board and stuff, especially after seeing Andor. This is back to like, because it did tell us
What a great show that was.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But the second episode picked up a lot more action, a lot more heavier stuff going on and everything. And of course, like the cliffhanger at the end, and I forgot my man's name and everything, but he's a creepy dude and stuff.
Wilco.
Yeah, Wilco, who ended up killing the
that was like a Captain Rex type character.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I will not.
That was great.
I will not. What did he say? I will not falsify records.
I will.
He said, "Don't worry, I will." But yeah, so the second episode was better than the first for me. And I'm just waiting for it to roll into the season. I know it's going to give me some, you can't go wrong with what Dave Filoni wants to do. So I'm not worried.
This is one of the rare times, so we might have to clip this up. But I fully agree. I fully agree with DP. I fully agree. It was a slow burn for me.
We got to add that.
Where is it, Steel City? Where is it?
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. I don't have that. I mean,
I'm
sorry, I failed again.
We got to add that.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I fully agree. I was a little disappointed, to say the least. I'm happy that the content's back and the show's back, but a little disappointed. I was expecting a little more because it is season 2. I felt like this was kind of like maybe a starter episode. And lately with the Disney shows, episode 1 of everything's been kind of coming out with a bang. So a little bit of a slow burn, but brought us back to our character. So definitely appreciate it. As always, I mean, the aesthetics, it's looking a lot better. It's funny, when I saw the initial beginning of it, I was thinking of like, is this like an Avatar kind of ripoff? I'm thinking of it like I saw him by the water. I'm like, it's kind of Avatar-ish, right? So I didn't know if it was a James Cameron dig or not. Kind of funny. Also was kind of
Still don't know.
Yeah, still don't know. Still haven't finished it, but yeah, it was unique. It's kind of funny though how Filoni and the team puts these episodes and these shows together. I mean, we just did last month, a couple of weeks ago, right? Tales of the Jedi, and we do the kind of Dooku prequel, and we see his lair on that planet, and how they line the show up weeks later to then see the aftermath, right, of Dooku. Yes. So that's like perfect, right? How crazy is that he lines it up like that? And that was something I really appreciated, to kind of see the aftermath of his palace and what happened, and really to see what he's become, right? Because it's a weird part, but it kind of rewrites, the prequels, because that Dooku doesn't seem as, in the prequels, aggressive, snarkish, harsh to the people as we've just portrayed him being, stealing all these minerals. I mean, I was thinking we would see more of like, maybe Jedi artifacts after, maybe the Coruscant, people went in there and kind of raided it, right, like a palace. So I was expecting them to get more precious things like that. But no, it was cool to see that this guy literally was just stockpiling and basically being like, it was weird that he amassed this fortune right behind the emperor's back to kind of build up his. Kind of like the Maul's faction that they were running. So it seemed like you had all these powers, kind of in the background, him trying to create his own empire with his fortune and him building up. Because as we all know, with war and any kind of separatist movement, the biggest thing is the funding, as we've seen in Andor, right? It's getting the
Yeah.
money right. So with him having the funds and all that stuff, now we know that there was something serious he was planning. If there was an overthrow, whether it be the Palpatine himself or him trying to go at the Empire. So it's really
And it would have
interesting.
been massive. It would
Oh
have been
yeah,
massive because
yeah.
he had a huge amount of,
I mean,
wealth.
yeah. How many craters did they? I mean, they flew three off, and there was a fourth one, right? So
Yeah.
And
I
that was
mean, like,
just what we saw
right.
because they had been doing this for a while. So
I mean,
that
yeah,
was
this guy was. I mean, he was ruthless at this time, just taking over these planets, and basically enslaving all these people. So, like I said, it was nice to see. Little bit short on my what I expected. I mean, great content. A little short though, but yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. Definitely great to be back talking Star Wars new stuff and want to keep it going.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me is that I'm just happy to be back in the
Right.
universe.
Yeah.
After
Yeah.
the Andor series ends, and you got like this black hole and nothing really going on and everything. Content, Star Wars, be back in the universe could have been like a little bit more of a something else for me and everything. But yeah, I'm just glad to be back in the universe again and seeing this. I love Bad Batch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm glad about? Mention of Tarkin, Governor Tarkin. So he's not quite Moff yet. He's not Vader's second, Vader's controller yet. He's still, but he's legit. People want him to notice who they are, but in a good way. That Wilco, that's his name, right? Wilco or Will?
Rampart is the other Imperial.
Okay.
Wilco is the clone that he shoots in the face.
Okay.
Or wherever.
You're right.
I think he's on the back. Pretty sure. So
It was still brutal.
that's what I like to see.
Mm.
Yeah. That was
I want to talk a little bit more about about Dooku here, because I think Tales of the Jedi obscured Dooku a little bit because he was just this sort of classic, serial villain.
Right.
What is he trying to do? Oh, he has this plan about getting rid of the Sith, but in reality, no, he would have been just as bad as Palpatine. In fact, he would have been exactly like Palpatine. If we are to believe Episode 9, because Palpatine or the ultimate Sith would have just simply inhabited him, and it would have been exactly Palpatine, literally, or because absolute power corrupts absolutely. And when you have an end that demands any means, then you'll undertake whatever means you need to. And you can't just denude a planet of resources without hurting the population of that planet or continent. To pick an example that we could pick from our universe if we wanted to. So Dooku was not some freedom fighter, and I think that's interesting that they kind of snap us back and forth here, because they say it's like he says, okay, the reason for initially doing this is legitimate, which is there is a Sith Lord, he is taking control of the Senate, and the Jedi are in double Dutch. But what he's doing along the way, including creating an army of robots and sicking them on the entire frigging galaxy, and then we find that far from being, like the center capital of his new empire, right? His home planet was just going to be a backwater that he was going to sort of, pump and dump.
But wasn't that whole droid army a cover? I mean, that wasn't even what he was going for. He just wanted to make sure he could control the money. He had the banking guild. I mean, he had all these Trade Federation embargoes on all these systems all wrapped up, and he was taking the profit from all that. The whole Federation droid army was just that cost him nothing. That was literally just I don't know, it's a marketing ploy. Just like drawed everyone away from it so he could continue gathering all his funds. So ultimately, like we said, what did he want to do? He ultimately wanted to fund an overthrow of the emperor and
Right.
take everything for himself. And that's why in that scene on the ship, on Grievous's ship, he was stunned that all this was coming to an end. He didn't even know. I mean, he didn't see it coming. He had no idea that there was this Anakin Skywalker that was going to come out of nowhere and take him out. And that's why he was very complacent at the end, because he was still seeing hope that he was going to like overthrow the Emperor and perhaps take that seat. A very tactical man. I mean, he really was looking at things in a very different way than I think we see other Star Wars villains look at their current, their where they are and their future.
I mean, yeah, I definitely agree with that.
He's a Dookie.
He's thoughtful. I mean, we saw him do good, didn't we?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I guess right? he claims that he does those things, but they're all selfish, and his motivation,
whatever your ambition is, however you can get it to work.
I do think that Tales of the Jedi, while providing us with that good justification for, why he thinks the Jedi Order is corrupt, it also shows us that the Dooku is believes his own hype and is very prideful. And when we see these flashes of anger in Tales of the Jedi, it's because he's defied, like, personally. And I think that pride is what Palpatine really preys on. And that's operative here because, like you said, Ken, who's Palpatine getting rid of by getting rid of Dooku and having them be on the losing side of the war? The banks. He's getting rid of, the trade guild. He's getting rid of any institution that's strong enough to stand against the state in any way. Because once the state is all of the people, because Palpatine is all of the people that matter, the state can do anything to perpetuate itself. From a moralistic perspective, and obviously I don't agree with these revolutionary ideas myself.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point as well about Dooku. I mean, like, with him being so prideful and in him taking on the dark side, it's almost like, when you go back to the rule of two, this is why the Sith were so defiant about having multiple, right? The Palpatine's only so strong, but as people's hate, their anger, their fear, it grows into them. It powers them stronger. So that in turn allows him to really lose control of people, right? As people become more confident, they become more proficient in the dark side. That's something that Palpatine doesn't want because he can't negate that, right? He can create that doubt in the Jedi and to cause that kind of break in them, in the good. But when you have somebody that's that hateful, that's strong on the dark side, which Dooku wasn't, because as we've seen on his end, he was still conflicted. I mean, that was his overall downfall, is he was kind of caught between two minds, right? He wanted to be the Emperor, but he still, had this feeling for his Padawan. I still think in my mind that he still had some kind of thought of sorrow for Qui-Gon. He still had this thought about Obi-Wan. So he was still kind of conflicted. And as we've seen with the most powerful Sith, you have to be all in to really become a Sith Lord and ultimately become the Emperor. You got to be like 1,000% in. Anakin had that same kind of flaw, right? There can't be no chink in the armor. And with these characters, you see that chink in the armor that Jedi that just don't go on to be really good dark side users, right?
And that's why they're dead.
Right.
That's why they're all dead. The ones that can't get rid of that compassion, that conflict, the ones that can't solve that problem and go all in. So if you're playing poker and you think you got the best hand, what do? You go all in. You can't pull back. You can't show your face. You can't show that you're weak in any way. You got to go all in. And that's why these guys aren't on the board anymore. They just weren't there at the end. And maybe that's why the post-quill failed, because it didn't have these intense like characters in it anymore. They were gone.
No, you really didn't. I mean, Yeah, it's tough, and then obviously with this year, there's a lot of content coming out. We'll probably revisit some of the post Quill stuff. But yeah, it really it makes you beg to differ. Like with these stories we're telling, like so this was Dooku. We've seen how he was previously, and now we're kind of seeing the downfall of what the person was. It kind of lets you kind of beg to differ. Like with the Emperor, what do you see in these characters? Because these people are conflicted, and he's like ultimately the ultimate judge of character. Why not choose a species that don't have these flaws? He's drawn to these humanoid, as we would,
Right.
I guess, recognize them figures as being the most powerful. Maybe because he can understand them, and maybe he's worried because you've seen him take some of the brothers of Dathomir, like when he had Maul, right? He really couldn't manipulate them the way he wanted to, other than making them suffer at the end when he wouldn't listen, kind of like somebody abusing a pet, to some extent, right? So I think that he sticks with these species types that he can really control. When ultimately, I mean, when you look in Sith history, there have been other species that have been more powerful because we all know as the human body, right? And it's been said that it broke down, right? If he didn't sneak Plagueis, so to speak, even though his death, by Sidious is still question marked, you know, those other beings live stronger. They typically are stronger than him. This guy just maybe outsmarted more than others. So it's always an interesting part when we talk about the characters he chooses to really control because ultimately he doesn't choose maybe the strongest person to be his heir because he knows ultimately Sith backstab each other and they're going to overthrow him at some point as
What
he did
about a
his master.
droid? What about a droid? A
I mean,
droid
ultimately, he could have programmed
control.
one. I mean, wasn't that kind of the idea of Starkiller? He was a
Yeah.
clone that,
Yeah.
was overpowered, and that was the goal, right? When you create something that's strong, he lost control of Starkiller, and, we saw, what happened with that story. So it's one of those ones you want to keep somebody, close, but, keep your enemies close, but not too far
But
behind
not
type
that
deal.
close. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, it's a weird one to see this stuff. And then you see the clones as we bring it back to the Bad Batch, and it kind of makes you wonder, like like you said, their compassion towards one another. Like, I mean, they said it off the bat, right? When the she seen him, she said, you don't look like a typical clone, right?" Which was
Right,
really striking. Clones all look the same. What
right,
were you guys? So
right.
it does let you bring it home that they kind of were like the Bad Batch, right? They were ones that were imperfect. They have different hair colors. They don't look the same
Face
at all. The only
tattoos.
thing the only thing they have are the brown eyes, and not all of them even have brown eyes. So yeah, it was a really interesting take.
Think about how what that says about how when they're citizen soldiers, they have this differentiation. We see so much of that in the Clone Wars series where they're all different face tattoos and like you said haircuts and you know uh, eventually armor plating and everything. But the clones for the Empire, they never take their helmets off. They
Right.
are very it's hard to tell them apart. We really don't get any differentiation, and it says that the only way to make them do these awful things to everybody is to smash their humanity down into a cube. You know what I
Right.
mean? Smash it down to nothing and really lean on that chip. And you can only make people do so many things or go so far by making them. It's
Mhm.
there are limits to people's willingness to cooperate.
Yeah, the clone troopers, stormtroopers, clone troopers, no personality. It's, I mean, I was just even, watching this episode again. I mean, just watching how they interact with each other. It's all just straightforward. You got to wonder what they do when they're off time or whatever. What do they do when they rest? They just go to sleep, get up, eat breakfast, go back to clone trooping, and
Well,
then go
we start
sleep.
to see that in the first trilogy.
Yeah,
Well, second trilogy. We start to see what the stormtroopers are. They're kind of like they're just dudes like us in in a uniform talking. Like the two stormtroopers that are talking on the gangplank while Obi-Wan Kenobi is turning
yeah,
off the tractor beam. They're just talking. They're like, "Hey, I saw this thing going on the other day. What do you think?" Well, you know, there's a new whatever. So they sort of evolved from the clone to more of a human type of thing. We're
Right.
we're now just seeing that initial transition now where
Right.
they're not really they're sort of more I'm gonna say human, whatever. moving from clone to being more interactive. You know,
Right.
I mean, I think they cared about CT-8880, whatever, that got knocked out. You know, they were like, find that clone, find that trooper. You know, it was more like, what happened to that guy more than like, you know, loss of a piece of machinery. You know, who cares? But
Was
they
it?
were,
I don't know. I mean, Hitch made the point about them smashing their humanity down into a cube. I thought that was a very great analogy, right? You know, by the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the way that just the way that they interact, even in those points that you said, Ken. Their humanity is just so small that they only you know, Empire only gives them so much room to like interact and react and, you know, do different types of things. So that's why the Bad Batch just stands out even that much more, you know, versus what we see with like, you know, the clone troopers and stuff. You know, it's weird.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of, I guess my only like I don't know, it's kind of like my only gripe about the whole kind of cloning process on Camino because like they're all clones of the original what Django Fett. So the guy was a soldier who really had no personality. So I can get why the clone troopers have no personality because the guy really didn't, right? He was a soldier. So that's how they created him. So for you then to have like the Bad Batch to have like this like free will almost, to then have like Omega, it's just like, this child. It makes you beg to differ. Makes you wonder like was the Camino facility like they had to program this into them. It wasn't like a Bad Batch almost. It was like somebody created almost like a back door, right? Like in case this were to happen, let's make some people have personality. Let's make because it just makes it a little weird when we discuss this because as you said, this is the beginning of the end, right? They just talked about it. The Camino's gone, so cloning facilities are basically done. So they're going to have to replace these clones with something, whether it be standard droids, which aren't as nimble, I guess, or maybe the technology's not there, so they didn't switch to humans and basically a military force, which we see in the sequel trilogy and the second sequel. So I understand. I guess that's a tie-in to them bombing these cloning facilities and that the ending until we seen them kind of doing it with Snoke and the Emperor and Grogu, right? As we get forward timeline to the Mandalorian and whatnot. So it's on a smaller scale, but that large scale cloning seems to be coming to an end now. And I do appreciate that tie-in, but it's just weird how like it's they're imperfect versions of one perfect clone. It's really not perfect. It has no personality, but then there's all these characters it does. So that's it's a little unique and weird to me at the same point.
I mean, experiments are what they are. You
Right.
try different things, and then you get. I mean, in biology, you have like a bad batch.
Right.
You throw it out. It's science or whatever. I'm not a scientist or whatever, but you have like a certain section of stuff that you experiment on that
Right.
don't work. You put it to the side, and that's it. And then you take the stuff that does work, is what what they wanted. These they're perfected clone
Yeah.
troopers and everything to do all their bidding and do what they would do eventually what they want them to, and to put those chips inside of them and everything. And the bad batches like that
Yeah.
it's just exactly what what they say it is and everything, and having that humanity in them. I think is a weird interesting thing.
It is. It's kind of like a back door. Like they snuck it in to like certain ones. Like let's see if they have free will. What will happen, right?
Yeah, what will happen exactly?
it,
Experiment. Yeah.
it doesn't Tarkin find that? Doesn't he put them through the trials? He put them through the test.
He did that in about the second or third episode of the first season.
So he already saw potential
Yeah.
to maybe expanding on the clone, giving the clone a little more human, free will to make decisions on the go. And you want your soldier, you want your best guy to be able to change direction on the fly. I mean, that's something that the best gamers in the world can do. Instead of following a pattern, if something changes, if the algorithm changes, or if they respawn in a different place for whatever reason, they're able to change what they do. And I mean, as far as I know, the only way to do that is be human. because
Yeah.
that's something that makes us different than a program, because a program can't change itself. If it does, then it becomes a intelligent AI, and then we've got Terminator.
Yeah.
And that's the end
Terminator
of the
2
whole.
Oh,
and Terminator 3.
all the roads go there.
Right.
All the roads lead to Terminator.
By the way, I just saw Dark Fate's back on for those who watch TNT. You know, that's their new Star Wars kind of every night movie.
Oh,
You know, yeah.
So there's a lot with this Bad Batch. I mean, they could be maybe the Empire is looking at them as being the new army that they're gonna like replicate.
But didn't Tarkin, he put him through that. He put him through the first trial, and then he put him through a second trial. And I don't think he really liked what he seen, because he couldn't control him.
He couldn't.
And I think that's what eventually led them to go on the running. Them being, because he sent them on a mission,
right?
So he sent them on a mission to meet.
To eliminate the separatists.
Yeah, eliminate the separatists. They met what's my man's name?
Saw
Guerrero and everything. Yep. Saw that it wasn't what they thought it was, and there you go. They're down with the rebels now.
So you have if you give your army this ability to make a change on the fly, then you also have to be able to control them somehow. You have to have something that manipulate them. And he didn't have any way to manipulate these guys, so they were gone.
Which is like the ultimate flaw, like I think T. Mitch was, alluding to earlier with Palpatine, having that control, being he keeps going to these humans, humanoids or whatever, humans, and being able to control, but not being able to control them all the way, because of ultimately humans have those emotional and empathetic flaws and stuff, which leads to like downfalls and leads to Palpatine's eventual downfall. So
can they shave those edges off, right? Can they do it? I think is the question of season 1, and Crosshair answers that the answer is yes, it can, but it's a lot more than they were doing before.
Right.
And I think we're seeing the clone troopers on the other end of that here in season 2, where the regs are just robots now. And it's interesting because they're definitely crappier than they were as clone troopers. They're worse. And that's another thing that I think is interesting about what the Empire is doing here is they don't need a great army anymore. They're not really relying on these people, because they have to rely on these people, and it gives the Kaminoans or the Kaminoans, however they pronounce it. It gives them leverage over the Empire. And look, if you need water and I have the control of the spigot, I'm in charge ultimately. So whoever controls the spigot is in charge, and the Emperor knows that you can't have that spigot going off willy-nilly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, keep in mind at this period, I mean, there are somewhat, I guess, an inquisitors out there, but for the most part, they can afford to have a less of an army, because they're really only going against low level people to some extent. The Jedi are gone allegedly, so I mean, it's not like they have to have a highly trained, military force to really deal with them, right? I mean, you might get your outliers here or there, but that's where your Vaders, your Mauls come into play. Whatever apprentice he has at the period. So, I mean, it's kind of one of those things that you can afford to take your foot off the gas, so to speak, with the soldiers, because that threat necessarily isn't there. You have even the rebellion to some extent, right? There's not really that force there yet for you to have to worry about.
This is during that salad era.
Yeah.
It came silently, like they didn't know how big this was going to be, or I think they would have reacted more. I think the Empire would have been more proactive than sort of reactive. I mean, they were waiting for the things to happen. They were waiting to see the evidence more than jumping on things. It's like anything. You see something bad happening, you want to block it out. You want to just say, that's not really happening, because what happens if you admit that you can't control something? Well, that just makes you look worse, doesn't it? I mean, that just makes you look like you're a clown. So I think the Empire, the Imperials, were just in a place where They wanted everyone to just think everything was fine. We're here. We're ultimately going to benefit you. We're going to bring peace to the galaxy. I mean, that's funny. That's a statement uttered by both sides throughout this entire story. Bring peace to the galaxy. Both Empire says it and the Jedi say it.
You're getting to the moral questions of what is good and what is evil, but and what perspective each side has.
That's a big story.
It's
So that's a nerd court there. The Jedi, the Coruscant Council versus the Empire.
Yeah, who was right and what perspective
and why?
Oh, don't
were they
don't
right?
get started. Don't get him. He's taking off his glasses. Oh,
there it is.
Here we go.
The galaxy far, far away is much simpler than this. Galaxy that we live in, where morality is a choice. In the galaxy far, far away, the Jedi are good and the Sith are evil, and that's just kind of how it is because it's fictional.
Because that's what the story dictates.
Because Dooku said so.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe the genocide against your own people aspect of Dooku here makes me think that the Sith are generally more eviler. Right. Maybe that's it.
Eviler.
More eviler.
I guess
I don't know because I mean we only get one side of the Jedi, and based on what we see from the Tales of the Jedi and kind of how Dooku feels and maybe how Yaddle felt about the Council, I mean I'm starting to believe that maybe Master Yoda sent a lot more Jedi on suicide missions, so to speak. I think there's a lot more to see with the Jedi, and Hitch alluded to this, and we have. I'd love to see more of that, like more of those detective tales, right? You know, we talk about like the spin on Batman, and when they did maybe the Batman with Robert Pattinson, you know, that different spin. I'd love to see more of that detective work with the Jedi Council. Maybe do something a little different to see and what else did they do other than be just like these defenders of the peace or military soldiers, right? Because we see what clones can do with the Bad Batch and kind of a different spin on what soldiers do. I just think that's something they need to take maybe a chance on to see another side of Jedi other than them being such linear characters. You know, I just feel like there's more depth.
And maybe we'll see Jedi like bad cops, like on the
I'm
tape.
sure there were, right? I mean, look at Dooku, right? Dooku's out here electrocuting people and choking them, and his Padawans like, so
he
what are you doing? Right?
He was getting his Hitler stuff on, you know.
Yeah, I mean, on the take, like really, like going out there and I'll help you, but you got to pay me. You know, seeing those advantages, you know, it had to happen. I mean, we're all sort of a species that are, you know, we have our own principles to think about, but we also look at our own gain. We can all make decisions on the fly as to what we're going to do.
Yeah.
So are we asking for like a young Dooku series, you know, animated?
It would be nice to see a little bit more, maybe. But I mean, I'd just like to see something different with the Jedi because, like I said, the story's been so linear. I'd like to see more like maybe more detective, maybe like you said, more of the grime. I mean, these Jedi's weren't all like defenders of the peace, like nice guys. Like there were more swashbucklers out there, kind of like Dooku, that might not have been as evil, but I'm sure there were Jedi that towed the line, right? That's why not everybody can be on the council, so to speak, or get a chair.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I want to see.
But that's all politics.
I want to see a Yoda series. Yoda,
like imagine, you know, with all the stuff that's contemporarily going on with the procedural crap in the House of Representatives, which is, you know, politics is always like this, and it is what it is without making a value judgment one way or the other. But you could imagine that, you know, the council is supposed to be the most powerful Jedi, but the most powerful Jedi aren't on it because of like, you know, minority opinions. Then that, and by more, you know, I mean, like, you know, 1 out of 3 when I say that, like Minority Report, like that sort of minority being like, but because of those things, you know, they're not getting the best and the brightest when you select for loyalty or when you select for docility instead of skill, you end up denuding the talent pool that's available to you. And man, did they need like 8 or 9 Mace Windu's, and they had 1, and that wasn't enough. They had 1 Yoda. They needed like 3 Yodas to go to beat Palpatine. 1 wasn't enough. And who knows how many different, you know, Jedi Masters over the preceding 20 years since, you know, that's a, you know, Jedi Masterhood lasts a long time. How many times did they make that wrong choice and not have the right person in place just because they were selecting for criteria that were incorrect?
Right. Each and every
Yeah.
time. You don't. And it would ultimately led to their downfall.
Yeah.
I mean, that's way to. It's amazing how when you're creatively writing a story and everything, and the story just writes itself. At the end of the day, you don't even have to dictate where it should go. It just ends up writing itself because this is naturally the evolution of where it will end up going. They eventually fell, which is sort of akin to a lot of I'm sure Hitch empires and stuff in real life.
Yeah, this is an interesting situation because Order 66 is a military coup where they back the supreme commander of the military that happens to be the head of state. So it's one of those sort of thing you maybe would see I don't know, Germany in 1918 when something kind of like this. The French Republic in 1792 was overthrown by people who wanted to reform the military because they were worried about the other states of Europe coming in and murdering the government. That was a pressury thing.
So are you saying that Star Wars kind of pulls its values and storylines from actual, like, human history?
I'm saying that you can absolutely, for sure, find examples of all these things in human history, and particularly if you want to talk, not to use these guys as the hyperbolic example of everything, but if you want to talk about this particular effect, look no further than the Nazi Party in Germany in what they did over the 1930s, and in this case, very, very specifically.
What a perfect example that is, because the Empire is basically, I mean, let's just throw the cards out there. Let's just open our hands up. The Empire is they're a bunch of Nazis.
God, really?
Yeah.
Oh man,
they're just we're talking about the Third Reich, the Empire, because George Lucas wasn't a moron, and he knew he already had the definitive evil. So what you're saying, T. Mitch, is that really, or Steel City, that basically we're talking about like the Nazis against the whole universe.
Well, that's the way that would,
right?
if you were to get a Nazi and talk to them, which I don't recommend doing, they probably would say
everybody.
Yeah, that's what they would tell you, is that they're a persecuted
they're against
faction.
everybody.
It's a matter of perspective, though.
That's all Mein Kampf is Hitler saying, "Oh, the left is against me. They're gonna kill me." That's all. It's all a paranoid fever dream about the left.
Yes.
And he does specifically say that the left is his enemies. By the by,
good
for the
is
record,
a matter
for everybody.
of perspective.
Remember that. Yes.
So, as I was saying, during the 30s, the Nazi Party selected for loyalty in its military commanders, resulting in a command system in World War II that was inferior to what they were up against in the West, drastically inferior, all the way from the top to the bottom. And it's something that you can read real books by actual historians that are better at knowing things and having actually read stuff than me. They can tell you all about that. And it's not just a Nazi thing, because in the Soviet Union, the same exact time period, Stalin did exactly the same thing to his military, purged his military, wrong-footed the Soviet military, significantly moving into World War II. And so that's something that happens in empires. And the reason is because the emperor or the dictator or the leader or whatever they're calling themselves in this configuration cannot tolerate threats to the leader. And that means anybody with any strength whatsoever. So if you saved, for instance, if you saved some old lady from being hit by a trolley in Germany and you became famous, that would be a very dangerous item for you.
Yep, exactly. Great.
And that
because of great analogy. Great.
And that would be like Andor, because he did do that. He did save innocents. He saved people. I mean, he basically was working to save the galaxy. He didn't know it yet. He didn't know what he was doing, but he was working toward that. So that makes him a very important adversary to the Empire.
Only if his exploits were being publicized and if people actually knew he was, the one. You know,
Right.
yeah. So I mean, that's definitely a great point, Ken.
Yeah,
But
that
only
didn't
if
happen until there's this movie called Rogue One, which um, kind of focuses on Andor and how he is now publicly, um, introduced as the one that starts the rebellion. I mean, you see his face in holograms everywhere as a wanted man. I mean, he's a rebel sympathizer. He's a thief. He's a scoundrel. He's a murderer. He will kill you on command.
but
If
he's a
you,
hero.
Yeah.
He's a hero.
yeah,
Yeah. To finish up on this Palpatine point, and we talk about all this, it kind
We
of, and
love
me
we
and
love
me,
talking about Sheev.
right?
He
We do,
is the fulcrum on which this universe turns.
right? Like, it makes you
Palpy.
beg. It makes you beg to differ. Why did he ever let Thrawn join the dark side? Because the Chiss cannot be mind controlled, so he essentially either has a sleeper agent or a loose cannon. Because at this point, right, he knows nothing about the unknown regions. He later finds out that the Chiss cannot be mind controlled, that they are technically superior than he could ever do with the Force. So as we learn later, and we may not ever learn, maybe we learn with this Ahsoka, and they bring the Chiss and him into the fold more. But it makes you wonder how he is even a part of the Empire, right? Because this guy cannot be controlled. He's superior, as we said, so he is the best person for the job necessarily. But who selects him? Is this literally somebody to Palpatine? Was he enslaved? Like that brings this, the character of him, of Thrawn, really, really more. Because in the books, they really don't speak about, kind of
no,
his rise to the Empire. It's just kind of like he's there, he joins it, but he's almost like, Andor, right? He's kind of like this rogue kind of swashbuckler that, does his own thing, and ultimately, as we see with, Ezra, he makes his own decisions, right? And
mm,
he's gone. So that makes me, kind of understand it, or see, the Chiss is maybe that anti Jedi, I mean, Sith kind of, you can't mind trick them, kind of like whatever the Hutts are, their species, right? They can't be mind tricked. Watto was the same. Really, you
Yep.
can't really redo things. So, it's interesting how, as we say, certain beings, certain different species aren't in the clone troopers, aren't, really real, aren't aligned even as Jedi or Sith. Um, so yeah, that was the joint. And before we go, DP alluded to this, uh, Omega, and it's something I wanted to bring to you guys. And it's something as we discuss things, my mind's always going 12 different ways, right? So she's essentially the daughter of Django, brother of Boba. As we move this forward, right, and it was kind of like my gears are moving like 80 miles an hour forwards. Wouldn't you want to see her, try to reclaim Mandalore as her brother was kind of a Mandalorian, right? It only
I'd like
seems
to see
right.
her succeed. I'd like to see her like win. Yes.
It's only right to bring her back into, I would see, in a real time show. And what better in the 2 months from now to kind of see her rise, or involved to some extent, because she's already on a decelerated age process. So right now she's what, preteenish, getting to teenage, and then the way that she ages, she won't be that old. She'll be an adult, maybe younger than
Yeah.
Bo-Katan, kind of. So
She'll be
it would,
exactly as old as Boba Fett, right? Like they're
right.
the same age,
Yeah.
So
right? Because
Same here.
they're the same.
Or
yeah.
So she'll be
twins.
like 40, 69-ish, like something like that. You know what I mean? Like who
Yeah.
knows? There's that 30-year age range that Boba Fett looks
Yeah.
like in in
Book of
that
Boba
show.
Fett.
Yeah. He either
Yeah.
looks
So
95, dead, or 32.
so yeah, I mean that the character, because right now, like DP said, it's kind of, it's not annoying with the preteen stuff, but it's kind of like I wish that we start to see her mature a little bit, kind of like we saw uh what was her, the daughter of the senator. Why is her name slipping my mind?
Mon Mothma?
Mon Mothma, yeah. As we saw the maturation of Mon Mothma's, and
Yeah.
even young Leia, right? We
In the
saw
show.
that
Mhm.
maturation, right? How in a short amount of time. I
Even
hope they do that.
in the
Yeah, even
beginning.
Ahsoka, right? Yeah. So I hope they kind of speed up the maturation a little bit with Omega and not really use her as kind of like the comic young kiddish relief, you
Yeah.
know,
Right. Totally 100% agree.
because she's still a soldier at the end of the day. So even though she has a little more free will, I would like to see her be a little more along with her training and just how her mannerisms are.
Well, look, these two episodes. Well, the second episode, she was still on getting that treasure.
Yeah, she
At
was
the very
helping.
end. She could not win. I felt so bad. Give this kid a break. She dropped the bag. All the gold went all over the place. She's like, "No, I'm going after it." No, you're not. This whole ledge is going to collapse. You're not getting anything. She was still going after that. So her ambition is to complete the mission. That's all she cared about.
Well,
And
I thought it was a maturation when she let go. You know, I love that. That part I
it
love.
finally let go, right?
It was a kid,
But
just let it go. You know, and she
but no
closed
one
her
can
eyes.
give that kid a break. Give that kid a break. Let her get some of that.
I always think it's great when we see a Lucasfilm property pay homage to another Lucasfilm property, and I got some very, very, very serious Last Crusade vibes.
I was going to say that, yeah.
From that scene. It was like exactly that scene.
Dropping the bag and short.
Put it down.
Yeah.
I thought you were referring to Willow. So.
Oh.
Wow. You sure not a National Treasure dig or?
No, Last Crusade all the way.
It's the one with Connery in it, man. It's great. That's a great movie. I don't care. I'll stick up. You know what? I would stick up for that movie against Raiders of the Lost Ark myself. I will tell you I prefer it.
That whole timeline, that's the only that I can think of. That's the only timeline movie that was done all chopped up that still brings itself back and makes sense. If you watch it in its entirety, it makes sense. The entire Indiana Jones timeline is completely intact all the way to Crystal Skull, and the new one coming out, God help us.
The Dial of Destiny, which makes me think about nothing more than my job.
Yeah, no.
So make dials.
Yeah, if it's anything like the current ones, I can only imagine what it'll look like. You know, I mean, for God's sake, they killed James Bond. I'm still sick to death over that movie. I'm still sick to death.
I know you're shedding a tear there.
There's gonna be another James Bond someday.
It's the way that this 007 ended is disgusting. That'll be something we'll have to discuss because I watched it again and I'm just disgusted how they ended this version of Bond, so to speak. But yeah,
Best Bond argument sounds like a fun nerd court too, guys.
Yeah, but the Sith verse. What did you say? What did you say, T-Bitch, about Sith verse? What? Our next nerd court?
Oh, nerd court could be like what was better, the Coruscant Council?
Okay.
Whose motives were more clear, so to speak? Maybe like the Coruscant Council or the Empire, because ultimately the Empire, right, had structure to the government. They had a structure whether you like it or not.
I'm going with the Empire.
This is like poli-sci class.
Yeah,
the state has a structure and it also has a mechanism and a bureaucracy.
They had their plans. Their plans a lot more clear.
What is the state?
Themselves. They sold.
You need a technological terror. That's it. That's it. You need technology, and you didn't
all in the name of peace, though.
Imagine Palpatine giving a lecture, and every single time it's like, "But they won't listen." So when he just points at the Death Star, it's like, and we tell them, "Give us all your money," and they don't do it. So, you know what I mean?
It's a very good history lesson right there, Steel City. Very good history lesson.
Man,
you don't side with us, we'll kill you.
That's pretty much.
You go.
There's the Peloponnesian War, essentially, right there. That's essentially it. You want to read that? Go ahead.
No, we don't want to do that, but we will.
You can watch a YouTube video about it. That's about as good. You get all the important stuff anyway.
Hey, but you got to admit, at least Palpatine gave him a choice, right? Anakin just killed you. Anakin will just kill you, right? At least he did. He gave you a choice. Anakin, there's no choice.
Good is a perspective.
Anakin's like, I'm just the bullet that was fired long before I.
Anakin doesn't leave any survivors like Palpatine did. Kids, the dogs, everything was killed. The camps are gone, right? He killed animals, everything. Anakin leaves no stone unturned.
I mean, he lives on Mustafar, and is there another living being on Mustafar besides Anakin Skywalker?
Isn't that a demoralizing place to live? It's kind of like living in like what? I don't know.
Pittsburgh.
Maybe, yeah. You know,
It would be like
England.
if you. It would be like if you were, if you missed a tackle in an enormous like college football game, and then they just made you live in that stadium forever, and the only thing anyone ever knew about you was that you missed that tackle.
Right.
Terrible.
Yeah, I mean, all he has is a tomb of his dead wife there, right? It's kind of creepy. It's kind of like, I don't know, vampire vibes almost.
That is weird, man. I mean, he's just so goth, but
Yeah.
but because his body is only partially man. No one wants to be around him.
Right.
Obviously,
If you are, I'll probably choke you. So
it's his favorite thing to do. Now listen, all the attendants are like, he's going to choke you. It's okay. It's okay. Like, let him get it out of his system. Are you bringing him bad news? Might try to choke you twice.
But yeah, guys, I mean, it was good to be back today. You know, good to get back into it. You know, drip fed, so to speak, with 2 episodes. And I think they're going back to the 1 a week, right? I don't know if they have anything left. So yeah, we'll be back to 1 next week. And yeah, there's a lot coming up this spring. You know, we have Mandalorian. That's March 1st, I think. So that premieres. Don't know how they're doing that. I think it's just going to be 1, or we have that.
They'll figure it out.
We have Ahsoka coming. We have a lot of stuff.
You guys are stuck with us.
You are stuck.
The entire year.
All year.
2023. Subscribe. Do what you need to do, but you're watching us every Wednesday at 10.
Yeah.
Know your mom.
Sorry.
Yeah. DP will get a clean slate for Marvel. He's back on the payroll. Phase 5 is starting, so we all have a new clean slate. We have a clean slate now, so that'll be interesting to
DP's just
see.
smiling there. C's get degrees, so he's happy.
Right.
Let's just hope Ant-Man is not the next Thor to love
Black Panther.
Take us home.
But yeah, guys.
Count it down.
Count down. But yeah, guys. Once again, thanks for everybody for tuning in, and subscribe and like, and please share with everybody. And until next week, this is the way.
This is the way.
The way.